Zixtal's forelegs shook as he walked through the metal doors of New Terra Colony School. His green shell caught the morning light streaming through the windows. The young Vorthon had never been so far from his homeworld before. Everything here felt wrong. The gravity was too strong, the air too thick, and the sounds too loud. Behind him walked 3 other alien students. There was Pipara, a blue-skinned Merlani whose gills fluttered nervously in the dry air. Next came Bloom, a tall plant-like sylphite whose leaves rustled with each careful step. Last was Keeper Vilnara, the adult Vorthon who had come to watch over them and study human customs. The hallway buzzed with noise. Human children ran past them, shouting and laughing. Their voices echoed off the walls. Zixtal pressed closer to the wall, trying to stay out of their way. On his homeworld, young ones moved quietly and spoke in whispers. Here, the human children seemed to have no fear of making noise. Principal Stone appeared in front of them. She was a tall human female with gray hair and kind eyes. She smiled widely, showing her teeth. Zixtal had read that humans did this to show friendliness, but it still looked threatening to him. "Welcome to our school," Principal Stone said. Her voice was warm but loud. "I hope you'll enjoy your time here. Let me show you to your classroom." They followed her down the hallway. The walls were covered with bright pictures drawn by human children. Zixtal saw images of stick figures running, jumping, and playing. Some pictures showed humans climbing tall structures or hanging from bars. He wondered why human children drew pictures of dangerous activities. The classroom was full of human, students sitting at desks. They looked up when the aliens entered. Some pointed and whispered. Others waved their hands in greeting. Zixtal had never seen so many young predators in one place. "Class, these are our exchange students," Principal Stone announced. "They'll be joining us for the next month. Please make them feel welcome." A human boy with dark hair stood up. He was about 12 years old and had a confident smile. "Hi, I'm Jake Martinez," he said. "Want to sit with us?" Near Jake sat a girl with brown hair tied back in a ponytail. She looked strong and moved with easy grace. "I'm Lucy Barnes," she said. "We saved seats for you." A smaller boy with freckles waved. From the back row, "Danny Cole," he called out. "This is going to be awesome." The aliens took their seats carefully. The chairs were built for human bodies and felt uncomfortable. Zixtal tried to follow along as the teacher began the morning lessons. The human children seemed smart enough. They answered questions about math and science. Nothing too shocking happened. But then something changed. A loud bell rang through the building. Every human child in the room suddenly became alert. They sat up straighter and looked toward the door with excitement. "All right, class," the teacher said. "Time for lunch and recess. Remember to play safely." Words "play safely" seemed strange to Zixtal. On his world, play was always safe. Young Vorthons played quiet games that involved thinking and problem-solving. They never did anything that might cause harm. The human children jumped from their seats and ran toward the door. Zixtal watched in alarm as they pushed and shoved, trying to get out first. No adult seemed concerned about this aggressive behavior. "Come on," Jake said to the aliens. "Let's go eat, then we can show you the playground." They followed the human children to a large room filled with long tables. The aliens had brought special food from their homeworlds, but they watched the humans eat with fascination. The human children bit into their food with sharp teeth and chewed loudly. They laughed and talked while eating, sometimes with food still in their mouths. After eating, Principal Stone's voice came over a speaker system. "Attention, students. Recess time begins now. Please proceed to the playground in an orderly fashion." The human children cheered. They ran toward doors that led outside. The aliens followed more slowly, unsure of what they were about to see. The playground was a large area behind the school building. Zixtal stopped and stared. What he saw looked like a training ground for warriors. There were tall metal structures that reached high into the air. Thick ropes hung from wooden beams. Strange contraptions made of metal and plastic stood ready for use. "This is it," Lucy said proudly. "Our playground. What do you want to try first?" Before any alien could answer, chaos erupted. Human children scattered in all directions. Some ran toward the tall climbing structures and began scaling them without safety equipment. Others grabbed balls and began throwing them at each other. A group of older children started running in circles, chasing each other and tackling anyone they caught. Zixtal's eyes went wide. "Are they fighting?" he whispered to Keeper Velnara. The adult Vorthon was already reaching for her communication device. "I must report this immediately," she said. "The human children have begun some form of combat training." Meanwhile, Danny Cole was climbing a rope that hung 20 feet in the air. He pulled himself up hand over hand, his small body moving with surprising strength. Below him, other children cheered him on. "Danny's really good at rope climbing," Jake explained to the stunned aliens. "He's been practicing all year." "Practicing for what?" Pipara asked, her gills fluttering with fear. "For fun," Jake said, as if it was obvious. "Want to try the swings?" He pointed to strange devices that looked like torture equipment. Human. Children were sitting on small seats attached to chains. They were launching themselves high into the air, their feet leaving the ground completely. Some were going so high that they seemed to fly. Lucy ran past them, chasing another girl. "You're it!" she shouted as she tagged the other child's shoulder. The tagged girl immediately began chasing someone else. "What is it?" Bloom asked, her leaves trembling. "It's a game," Danny explained, having just finished his rope climb. "One person is it and has to catch someone else. Then that person becomes it. It's really fun." "But why do they run so fast?" Zixtal asked. "Someone could get hurt." Danny laughed. "That's part of the game. You have to be fast and smart to not get caught." As if to prove his point, a girl running at full speed tripped and fell to the ground. She scraped her knee and it began to bleed. The aliens expected immediate medical attention and adult intervention. Instead, the girl got up, looked at her bleeding knee, and shrugged. "I'm fine," she called to her friends, and continued running. Keeper Velnara's communication device buzzed. She stepped away to make her report while the aliens continued to watch in horror. More human children were now playing something called Capture the Flag. They had divided into 2 teams and were trying to steal a piece of cloth from each other's territory. The aliens watched as children tackled each other, rolled in the dirt, and engaged in what looked like organized warfare. "This is just the beginning," Jake said with a grin. "Wait until you see what we do in PE class tomorrow." The aliens looked at each other with growing fear. If this was what humans called play, what would their actual training look like? As the recess period ended and the children began walking back inside, Keeper Velnara finished her urgent report to the Galactic Council. Her message was simple, but alarming. "The humans are training their children for warfare under the guise of recreational activity. I fear we have severely underestimated this species. Request immediate guidance on how to proceed." The alien students followed their human classmates back into the school building, their minds reeling from what they had witnessed. They had come to learn about human education, but instead they had discovered something far more disturbing. These weren't just children playing games. They were young warriors in training, and they didn't even seem to know it. The next morning came too soon for Zixtal. He had spent most of the night thinking about what he had seen on the playground. The images of human children throwing themselves through the air and tackling each other played over and over in his mind. He wondered what new horrors today would bring. Keeper Velnara looked tired too. She had been up late talking to officials from the Galactic Council. They were as shocked as she was about the human training methods. Some wanted to remove the alien students immediately, but others thought they should stay and learn more about these dangerous creatures. The morning classes went normally enough. The human children sat quietly and listened to their teachers. They answered questions about history and literature. Zixtal began to relax a little. Maybe yesterday had been unusual. Maybe today would be different. Then the teacher made an announcement that sent chills through all the alien students. "Time for physical education class," she said cheerfully. "Please change into your gym clothes and meet Coach Sullivan in the gymnasium." The human children cheered just like they had for recess. They grabbed bags from their lockers and headed toward changing rooms. Jake Martinez stopped by Zixtal's desk. "You're going to love PE," Jake said with a big smile. "Coach Sullivan is awesome. He teaches us all kinds of cool stuff. Zixtal's legs trembled as he followed the other students. The aliens had been given special exercise clothes that fit their different body types. The clothes felt strange and uncomfortable. The gymnasium was a huge room with a high ceiling. The floor was made of shiny wood that reflected the bright lights above. Strange equipment lined the walls. There were thick ropes hanging from the ceiling, metal bars at different heights, and large rubber balls stacked in corners. Coach Sullivan stood in the center of the room. He was a large human male with gray hair and scars on his arms. His body looked like it had been through many battles. When he spoke, his voice was deep and commanding. "Welcome to PE class," he said. "Today we're going to start with some basic warm-up exercises, then move on to our main activity." The aliens looked at each other nervously. On their homeworlds, exercise meant gentle movements and quiet meditation. They had no idea what human warm-up exercises might involve. "Everyone spread out and give me 20 jumping jacks," Coach Sullivan ordered. The human children quickly moved into position. They stood with their feet together and arms at their sides. Then, on the coach's count, they began jumping. Their feet spread apart while their arms swung up over their heads. Then they jumped back to the starting position. They did this 20 times without stopping. Zixtal tried to copy them. On his first jump, his legs got tangled and he fell over. His hard shell hit the floor with a loud crack. The human children nearby looked concerned, but Coach Sullivan just nodded. "That's all right, Zixtal," the coach said. "Try again, but go slower." By the time Zixtal managed 5 jumping jacks, the human children had finished all 20 and were barely breathing hard. Lucy Barnes looked like she could do 20 more without any problem. "Now give me 15 push-ups," Coach Sullivan called out. The human children dropped to the floor and placed their hands flat on the ground. They held their bodies straight and began lowering themselves down, then pushing back up. Their arms moved like machines, steady and strong. Zixtal attempted 1 push-up. His arms shook with the effort. His shell was too heavy and his limbs too weak. He collapsed after holding the position for only a few seconds. Meanwhile, 10-year-old Danny Cole was completing all 15 push-ups with perfect form. His small body moved up and down like he had been doing this exercise his whole life. "Wenduiaya," he finished. He wasn't even tired. "Excellent work, Danny," Coach Sullivan said. "You've been practicing." The warm-up continued with more exercises. Sit-ups, where the children lay on their backs and lifted their upper bodies repeatedly. Lunges, where they stepped forward and bent their knees until they almost touched the ground. High knees, where they ran in place while lifting their legs as high as possible. Each exercise looked like torture to the alien students. Pipara couldn't do any of the exercises because her body wasn't built for land movement. Bloom's plant-like structure made it impossible to bend in the required ways. Only Zixtal could even attempt the movements, and he failed at most of them. The human children completed every exercise without complaint. Some were better than others, but all of them could do the basic movements. Even the smallest and youngest humans showed strength and coordination that amazed the aliens. "Great warm-up, everyone," Coach Sullivan announced when they finished. "Now for our main activity. Today we're going to practice rope climbing." He pointed to thick ropes that hung from the ceiling. They were at least 20 feet long and looked rough and dangerous. Zixtal couldn't believe that children were expected to climb them. "Remember the technique I taught you?" the coach continued. "Use your legs to grip the rope and pull with your arms. Don't look down, and don't be afraid to fall. The mats will catch you." Lucy Barnes volunteered to go first. She grabbed the rope with both hands and wrapped her legs around it. Then she began to climb. Hand over hand, she pulled herself up toward the ceiling. Her movements were smooth and confident. The aliens watched in stunned silence as this 11-year-old girl climbed higher and higher. On Velnara's homeworld, this would be considered an elite military exercise. Professional soldiers trained for months to develop such strength and coordination. Lucy reached the top of the rope and rang a small bell that hung there. Then she slid back down, controlling her descent with her hands and feet. When she reached the bottom, the other human children applauded. "Who wants to go next?" Coach Sullivan asked. Several hands shot up immediately. The human children were eager to attempt this dangerous activity. They weren't afraid of falling or getting hurt. They were excited by the challenge. Danny Cole went next. Despite being the smallest student in the class, he climbed the rope with determination. His progress was slower than Lucy's, but he never gave up. When his arms got tired, he rested for a moment, then continued climbing. The aliens couldn't understand it. These human children were voluntarily participating in activities that could seriously injure them. They weren't being forced or threatened. They actually seemed to enjoy the risk and physical challenge. Jake Martinez climbed the rope with natural skill. His body moved like he had been born to do this. When he reached the top, he looked down at the aliens and waved cheerfully before sliding back down. "Would any of our exchange students like to try?" Coach Sullivan asked. Zixtal's entire body shook with fear. The rope looked impossibly high and dangerous. He imagined falling from that height and cracking his shell beyond repair. "It's okay, if you don't want to," the coach said kindly. "But remember, the only way to get stronger is to challenge yourself." One by one, more human children climbed the rope. Some made it to the top easily. Others only climbed part way up before sliding back down. But every single one of them tried. None of them were afraid. The final activity of the class was something Coach Sullivan called dodgeball. He divided the students into 2 teams and gave each team several rubber balls. "The rules are simple," he explained. "Throw the balls at the other team. If you get hit, you're out. If you catch a ball, the person who threw it is out. Last team with players remaining wins." The aliens were horrified. This was clearly a combat exercise designed to teach human children how to attack each other with projectile weapons. They watched in shock as the 2 teams lined up on opposite sides of the gymnasium. "Begin!" Coach Sullivan shouted. Chaos erupted. Human children began hurling rubber balls at each other with surprising force and accuracy. The balls flew through the air like missiles. Students dodged and weaved, trying to avoid being hit while aiming at their opponents. Jake Martinez caught a ball that was thrown at his head, eliminating the thrower from the game. Lucy Barnes dodged 3 balls in a row, then picked one up and threw it hard enough to knock down a boy twice her size. Danny Cole took a ball directly to his stomach. The impact knocked him backward and he fell to the ground. The aliens expected him to cry or call for help. Instead, he got up, smiled, and walked to the sideline to wait for the next game. When a ball hit another girl in the face, her nose began to bleed. She wiped the blood on her shirt and continued playing until she was eliminated. No adult rushed to help her. No one seemed concerned about the injury. The game continued until only Lucy Barnes remained on one team. She faced 3 opponents by herself. Instead of giving up, she fought harder. She dodged their throws and eliminated 2 more players before finally being hit. "Great game, everyone," Coach Sullivan said as the class ended. "Same time tomorrow. We'll be working on obstacle courses." As the students filed out of the gymnasium, Keeper Velnara updated her report to the Galactic Council. Her message was even more urgent than the day before. "It's worse than we thought," she wrote. "The humans aren't just training for warfare during playtime. They have organized classes dedicated to physical conditioning and combat skills. What they call physical education would be considered advanced military training on any civilized world. These children are being systematically prepared for violence, and they appear to enjoy it. I fear we have encountered a species that views pain and danger as entertainment." By the 3rd day, Zixtal thought he was beginning to understand human children. They were strong, fearless, and seemed to enjoy dangerous activities. But what happened during recess that day changed everything he thought he knew about these young creatures. The morning had been quiet. Regular classes went well, and the alien students were starting to feel more comfortable. Pipara had even managed to answer a question about mathematics correctly. Bloom was getting better at holding human writing tools with her vine-like fingers. When the lunch bell rang, they followed the human children outside as usual. The playground looked the same as always. Tall metal structures, swinging chains, and rough wooden equipment waited for the daily chaos to begin. But today, something different happened. A group of older human children, probably 13 or 14 years old, walked over to where Danny Cole was sitting. These older children were much bigger than Danny, who was still the smallest in their class. "Hey, little Danny," one of the older boys said. His voice was not friendly. "Still think you're tough because you can climb a rope?" Danny looked up at the bigger boys. He didn't look scared, but Zixtal could see tension in his small body. "I don't think I'm tough," Danny said quietly. "I just like climbing." "Well, we don't like show-off," said another older boy said. He pushed Danny's shoulder, making the smaller boy rock backward. The aliens watched in horror. This looked like the beginning of violence. On their homeworlds, adult supervisors would stop this immediately. Surely the human adults would intervene before anyone got hurt. But when Zixtal looked around, he saw something strange. The adults were watching, but they weren't moving to help. Coach Sullivan stood near the building, arms crossed, observing the situation. He looked ready to act, but he wasn't acting yet. Even stranger Jake Martinez and Lucy Barnes were also watching. They were Danny's friends, but they weren't rushing to help him either. They stood a few feet away, alert and ready, but they waited. "Leave me alone," Danny said to the older boys. He stood up to face them, even though they were all much taller than him. "Or what?" the biggest boy asked. He pushed Danny again, harder. This time, Danny stumbled but didn't fall. "Or this," Danny said simply. Then he did something that shocked every alien watching. Instead of running away or calling for help, Danny pushed back. He was much smaller than the older boy, but he put all his strength into the shove. The bigger boy wasn't expecting it and stumbled backward. "You want to fight?" the older boy asked, his voice angry now. "I don't want to," Danny replied, "but I will if I have to." What happened next was unlike anything the aliens had ever seen. The older boy lunged at Danny, trying to grab him. But Danny was quick. He ducked under the bigger boy's arms and got behind him. The other older children moved to surround Danny. Now it was 4 against 1. The aliens were sure they were about to witness serious violence. Zixtal started to call out for help, but Keeper Velnara stopped him. "Wait," she whispered. "Look at the others." The human children were watching, but they weren't panicking. They seemed to be waiting for something. Even the adults looked calm, though alert. Danny faced the 4 older boys alone. He was badly outnumbered, but he didn't show fear. When one boy grabbed for him, Danny slipped away. When another tried to tackle him, Danny moved to the side. But eventually the numbers were too much. 2 boys grabbed Danny's arms while a third prepared to hit him. That's when everything changed. Jake Martinez stepped forward. "That's enough," he said firmly. "Stay out of this, Jake," one of the older boys warned. "Can't do that," Jake replied. He moved to stand next to Danny. "You want him, you get me too." Lucy Barnes appeared on Danny's other side. "And me," she said. Now it was 3 against 4, but the sides were more even. The older boys were bigger, but Jake and Lucy were strong and quick. More importantly, Danny was no longer alone. But Danny surprised everyone again. "I can handle this myself," he told his friends. "We know you can," Jake said, "but you don't have to." The older boys looked at each other. They had expected to pick on one small child. Now they faced 3 determined opponents. The situation had changed completely. "Fine," the biggest boy said. "You want to fight? Let's fight." What followed was the strangest battle the aliens had ever witnessed. It wasn't the vicious combat they expected from predatory species. There were clear rules that nobody spoke, but everyone followed. No weapons were used. No one tried to seriously hurt eyes or other weak spots. When someone fell down, the fighting paused until they got back up. It was aggressive, but it was also controlled. Danny fought with incredible spirit. Every time he was knocked down, he got back up. He was taking hits from much larger opponents, but he never gave up. His small size actually helped him. He was harder to catch and could slip away from grabs. Jake and Lucy fought beside him, but they didn't try to protect him. They treated him as an equal partner, not someone who needed rescue. The 3 of them worked together like they had practiced this many times before. The fight lasted several minutes. All 7 children were breathing hard and had dirt on their clothes. A few had small cuts and bruises, but nobody was seriously hurt. and nobody seemed truly angry. Finally, Coach Sullivan walked over. "All right, that's enough," he said calmly. "Everyone did well. Now you all get to run laps together." The aliens expected punishment, maybe expulsion from school. Instead, the coach made all 7 children run around the playground 5 times. But the strangest part was what happened while they ran. The older boys started talking to Danny like he was their friend. "Good fight, little guy," one said. "You've got guts." Another boy asked Danny to show him the move he used to slip away from grabs. By the time they finished running, all 7 children were laughing and joking together. The fight was completely forgotten. It was like they had become friends through fighting each other. "What just happened?" Pipara whispered to Zixtal. Lucy Barnes heard the question and came over to explain. "Danny had to prove himself," she said simply. "The older kids needed to know he wasn't just a scared little kid. Now they respect him." "But why didn't the adults stop the fighting?" Bloom asked. "Because it wasn't really fighting," Jake explained. "It was more like testing. Sometimes you have to show people what you're made of." Danny showed he won't back down even when things are scary. Danny walked over, wiping blood from a small cut on his lip. He was smiling. "That was fun," he said cheerfully. The aliens stared at him in disbelief. Fun? He had just been in physical combat with 4 opponents, all bigger than him. He was hurt and dirty. How could that be fun? "You could have been seriously injured," Zixtal said. Danny shrugged. "Maybe, but I wasn't. And now those guys know I'm not an easy target. Sometimes you have to take risks to earn respect." The concept was completely alien to Zixtal's people. On his homeworld, respect came from intelligence, wisdom, or artistic skill. The idea of earning respect through voluntary combat was impossible to understand. "But what if you had lost the fight?" Pipara asked. "I did lose, sort of," Danny said. "There were more of them than us, but I didn't give up, and that's what mattered. Jake and Lucy helped me, but I had to stand up for myself first." Lucy nodded in agreement. "Danny proved he's tough enough to be in our group. The older kids proved they're not just bullies. They fight fair and know when to stop. Everyone learned something." As the recess period ended and the children walked back inside, the aliens tried to process what they had witnessed. This wasn't the random violence they had expected from a predator species. It was something more complex, a social ritual that established relationships and respect. That evening, Keeper Velnara struggled to write her report. How could she explain to the Galactic Council that human children engaged in voluntary combat not out of cruelty, but as a way of building friendships and earning respect? "The human social structure is more complex than we initially understood," she wrote. "What appears to be aggression is actually a sophisticated system for establishing social bonds and hierarchy. The children don't fight to hurt each other. They fight to understand each other. Their adults supervise but don't intervene, unless necessary, allowing the young ones to work out their relationships independently." She paused, then added, "Most disturbing of all, the children seem to genuinely enjoy these challenges. They view physical conflict not as something to be avoided, but as an opportunity for growth and connection. I'm beginning to suspect that what we call dangerous behavior is simply how humans naturally bond with each other." The alien students went to sleep that night with new questions in their minds. If human children could find friendship through fighting, what other aspects of their behavior had the aliens misunderstood? Tomorrow would bring new revelations about these mysterious creatures from the death world called Earth. The 4th day brought dark clouds and strong winds to New Terra Colony. Zixtal watched through the classroom window as trees bent under the force of the approaching storm. On his homeworld, weather like this meant everyone stayed indoors until it passed. Surely the humans would do the same. But when Principal Stone's voice came over the speaker system, Zixtal's hopes were crushed. "Attention, students," she announced cheerfully. "Today's weather provides a perfect opportunity for outdoor education. Please dress warmly and meet Coach Sullivan at the main entrance in 10 minutes. The human children cheered. They actually seemed excited about going outside in dangerous weather. Zixtal looked at his fellow aliens in horror. Pipara's gills were fluttering with panic. Bloom's leaves rustled nervously. Even Keeper Velnara looked worried. "Outdoor education?" she whispered. "In this storm?" Jake Martinez overheard her concern. "Don't worry," he said with a big smile. "Coach Sullivan knows what he's doing. This is going to be awesome." 10 minutes later, they all gathered at the school entrance. The wind was howling outside, and rain was starting to fall. Coach Sullivan stood ready, wearing a thick jacket and carrying a large backpack full of supplies. "Today we're going to learn basic wilderness survival skills," he announced. "The weather will make it more challenging, but that's good. Real survival doesn't happen on nice sunny days." The aliens couldn't believe what they were hearing. The humans were going to take children outside in dangerous weather on purpose. This wasn't education. It was madness. "Everyone grab your emergency packs," Coach Sullivan continued. "Remember what we practiced about staying together and following safety protocols." The human children picked up small backpacks that contained mysterious supplies. They put on raincoats and hats like they were preparing for battle. Their faces showed excitement, not fear. They walked outside into the storm. The wind immediately hit them with force. Rain began soaking through their clothes. Within minutes, the aliens struggled to keep up as the group moved toward the wooded area behind the school. Zixtal's protective suit began making warning sounds. The weather conditions were beyond what his people considered safe. His legs shook with each step as wind tried to knock him over. "Stay close to me," Jake called over the sound of the storm. He moved next to Zixtal and used his body to block some of the wind. The trick is to lean into it and keep moving. They reached the edge of the forest, where Coach Sullivan stopped the group. "First lesson," he shouted over the wind. "Reading weather patterns. Who can tell me which direction this storm is moving?" Lucy Barnes pointed toward the west. "The clouds are coming from that way," she said, "and the wind is getting stronger, which means the storm is still building." "Excellent observation," the coach replied. "Now, what should we look for to find shelter?" Danny Cole raised his small hand. "High ground that's protected from the wind," he called out, "and somewhere with natural cover, like thick trees or rock formations." The aliens listened in amazement. These human children, some as young as 10 years old, were discussing survival techniques like trained soldiers. On their homeworlds, this knowledge would be restricted to professional emergency responders. "Let's practice building emergency shelters," Coach Sullivan announced. "You have 20 minutes to construct something that will keep you dry and warm." The children scattered into small groups. Jake, Lucy, and Danny formed a team and invited the aliens, to join them. Zixtal watched in fascination as the human children immediately began working with purpose and skill. Jake found a fallen log and positioned it as the base of their shelter. Lucy gathered branches with thick leaves to create walls. Danny, despite being the smallest, climbed trees to cut down flexible branches that could be woven together. "How do you know how to do this?" Pipara asked, her voice barely audible over the storm. "We practice in PE class sometimes," Lucy explained while weaving branches together. "Coach Sullivan taught us last month. He says you never know when you might need these skills." The rain was getting heavier, but the human children worked faster rather than slower. They seemed energized by the challenge rather than discouraged by it. Within 15 minutes, they had built a small but effective shelter. The walls blocked most of the wind, and the slanted roof directed rain away from the interior. It was crude but functional. "Not bad for beginners," Coach Sullivan said when he inspected their work. "This would keep you alive in an emergency. Now let's test it." All 4 children and 3 aliens crowded into the tiny shelter. Despite the storm raging outside, they were relatively dry and protected from the wind. Zixtal was amazed that such a simple structure could be so effective. But the real test came when part of their group got separated. A sudden gust of wind knocked over a large tree branch, blocking the path between their shelter and where some other students were working. In the confusion and noise of the storm, 3 alien students from another group wandered off in the wrong direction. Coach Sullivan was helping another group when this happened. For several minutes, no adult knew that students were missing. It was Jake who first noticed the problem. "Where are the Merlani students?" he asked, looking around. They were right here a minute ago. Lucy counted heads quickly. 3 aliens are missing, she said with concern. They must have gotten confused when that branch fell. The human children didn't panic. Instead, they immediately organized a search. Danny volunteered to stay with the remaining aliens while Jake and Lucy went looking for the missing students. We need to move fast, Jake said. They're not used to this weather, they could be in real trouble. The 2 children disappeared into the storm without waiting for adult permission. They moved with confidence through conditions that would terrify most civilized species. Zixtal realized he was watching something remarkable. Children who were barely teenagers taking charge of a dangerous situation. 20 minutes passed before Jake and Lucy returned. They were soaking wet and covered in mud, but they had found the missing aliens. The 3 Merlani students were huddled under a rocky overhang, frightened and confused but unharmed. They were trying to get back to the school, Lucy explained to Coach Sullivan, who had arrived just as they returned. But they got turned around in the storm. We found them about half a mile from here. Good work, the coach said seriously. You followed proper search procedures and brought everyone back safely. Zixtal was stunned. Proper search procedures? These were children, not trained rescue workers. Yet they had executed a successful rescue operation in dangerous conditions without adult supervision. The most shocking part was how the rescued aliens reacted. Instead of being grateful, they seemed embarrassed. They had been saved by creatures they considered primitive and dangerous. It was humbling. As they made their way back to school, Zixtal found himself walking next to Danny Cole. The smallest human child had shared his emergency gear when Zixtal's protective suit started failing. Now Danny was more exposed to the harsh weather, but he didn't complain. Why did you give me your gear? Zixtal asked. Now you're getting cold and wet. Danny shrugged like it was nothing. You needed it more than me, he said simply. I'm used to this kind of weather. Besides, that's what friends do. Friends. The word hit Zixtal like a physical blow. This human child considered him a friend, even though they had only known each other for a few days. And because of that friendship, Danny was willing to suffer discomfort to keep Zixtal safe. When they finally reached the school building, all the children were soaked and muddy. Their clothes were torn and their hair was messy. But they were laughing and talking excitedly about what they had learned. That was the best outdoor education class ever, one girl said. I can't wait to try building a shelter again. Did you see how fast Jake and Lucy found those missing students? Another boy asked. They're like professional trackers. The aliens sat quietly, processing what they had experienced. These human children hadn't just survived dangerous conditions, they had thrived in them. They had worked together, solved problems, and helped each other without being told to do so. That evening, Keeper Velnara wrote her longest report to the Galactic Council. I must revise all my previous assessments, she began. What we interpreted as military training is actually something far more significant. These human children possess natural survival instincts and teamwork abilities that surpass our trained professionals. They don't just tolerate dangerous conditions, they use them as opportunities to grow stronger and more capable. She paused, thinking about Danny sharing his gear and Jake and Lucy risking themselves to rescue strangers. Most importantly, she continued, they don't survive as individuals. Their strength comes from their willingness to help each other, even at personal cost. What we saw as aggression is actually deep cooperation. They push each other to be better, then support each other when challenges arise. This isn't the behavior of a warrior species. This is the behavior of a species that survived impossible odds by working together. As Zixtal fell asleep that night, he thought about Danny's words. That's what friends do. Maybe the humans weren't as different from other species as he had thought. Maybe they were just better at being friends when it really mattered. On the 5th day, something had changed. The alien students no longer looked at the human children with fear. Instead, they watched with curious respect. After the storm rescue, Zixtal found himself wanting to understand these strange creatures better. During morning class, he noticed things he had missed before. When Lucy Barnes dropped her pencil, 3 other students immediately offered to pick it up. When an older boy struggled with a math problem, Danny Cole quietly helped him without being asked. When Jake Martinez saw that Pipara was having trouble with her writing, he showed her an easier way to hold the pen. These weren't the actions of violent warriors. They were the behaviors of creatures who naturally took care of each other. At our lunchtime, instead of sitting separately, the aliens joined the human children at their table. The conversation was different now. Instead of talking about games and activities, the humans began explaining things. "I know our games look scary," Jake said to Zixtal, "but they're not meant to hurt people. They're meant to make us stronger." Stronger? How? Zixtal asked. Danny swallowed a bite of his sandwich before answering. "Like yesterday in the storm. I knew how to find shelter because we play hide and seek. I knew how to help you because we practice helping each other during games." Lucy nodded in agreement. "My grandmother always says that play is practice for real life. The games we play as kids teach us what we need to know when we grow up." "What kind of real life needs rope climbing and dodgeball?" Bloom asked, her leaves rustling with confusion. "You never know," Jake replied seriously. "My dad had to climb a rope to escape a building fire when he was younger. My mom used dodgeball skills to avoid falling rocks during a landslide. Coach Sullivan says Earth was a dangerous place, so humans had to learn everything just to survive." Zixtal's eyes widened. "Earth was dangerous?" "Really dangerous," Danny said. "There were big animals that wanted to eat people. The weather could kill you. Earthquakes, volcanoes, floods, all kinds of scary stuff. Humans had to be tough just to stay alive." "But you don't live on Earth anymore," Pipara pointed out. "This colony is safe." Lucy smiled. "That's what everyone thinks. But what if something bad happens? What if the power goes out, or the protective dome breaks, or we have to leave quickly? We need to know how to take care of ourselves and each other." After lunch, something unprecedented happened. Instead of running to the playground, Jake turned to the aliens. "Do you want to learn some of our games?" he asked. "We can start with easy ones." Zixtal felt his legs tremble, but not from fear this time. He was nervous, but he also felt excited. "What's the easiest game?" he asked. "Tag," Danny said immediately. "You just have to run and try not to get caught." "But I can't run as fast as you," Zixtal said. "That's okay," Lucy said kindly. "We'll teach you tricks. Tag isn't just about being fast. It's about being smart and thinking ahead." They started with the simplest version of tag. Jake was it first, but he moved slowly so Zixtal could keep up. When Zixtal got tired, they stopped and rested. When his legs got tangled, they helped him up without laughing. Pipara tried to join, but her aquatic body wasn't built for running, so the humans modified the game. They created water tag, where Pipara could move through puddles while the others had to go around them. Suddenly, she had an advantage. Bloom couldn't move quickly at all, but the humans found a way for her to participate too. They made her the safe zone. Anyone who touched Bloom's branches couldn't be tagged. This made her an important part of the game instead of someone who couldn't play. For the first time since arriving at the school, all the alien students were playing instead of just watching. And something amazing happened. They started to have fun. Zixtal discovered that Lucy was right. Tag wasn't just about running fast. It was about watching where other people were going, planning your moves and working with your teammates. When he used his brain instead of just his legs, he was actually pretty good at it. During the game, something else remarkable happened. Zixtal fell down and scraped his shell on the rough ground. Instead of stopping the game, he got back up and kept playing. When he noticed he was bleeding a little, he wiped it off and continued running. It was a small thing, but it was the first time in his life that Zixtal had ignored pain to keep doing something fun. He was starting to understand what the humans meant about getting stronger. Later that day, Principal Stone called all the students together for a special assembly. She wanted to talk about the exchange program and what everyone had learned. "Our alien visitors have been with us for a week now," she said. "I'd like to hear what they think about our school." Keeper Velnara was asked to speak first. She stood up slowly, looking at all the human children who were waiting quietly to hear what she would say. "When we first arrived," she began, "we thought You were training your children for war. Your games looked like combat practice. Your physical education seemed like military conditioning. Your playground appeared to be a training ground for soldiers. The human children looked confused. They had never thought of their activities that way. But we were wrong, Velnara continued. You're not training for war. You're training for life. Every game teaches important skills. Every challenge makes you stronger. Every activity prepares you for difficulties you might face. She gestured toward the alien students. My people live on peaceful worlds. We never needed to be tough or brave. But watching your children, we realize we've lost something important. We've forgotten how to help each other through difficult times. Zixtal raised his hand and was given permission to speak. The humans aren't dangerous, he said to the assembled students. They're prepared. They play games that teach them to work together. They practice skills that keep them safe. They help each other even when it's hard. He looked at Jake, Lucy, and Danny. They're not warriors. They're friends who make each other stronger. Danny Cole stood up. We want to teach you more games, he said to the aliens. Not because we want you to be like us, but because games are more fun when everyone can play. Lucy Barnes added, and maybe you can teach us some of your games too. We want to learn about your worlds and your ways of having fun. Coach Sullivan stepped forward. That's a great idea, he said. Tomorrow we'll have a special PE class where everyone teaches everyone else. The humans will show the aliens our activities, and the aliens can show us theirs. The human children cheered, but this time the alien students cheered too. That evening, Keeper Velnara wrote her final report to the Galactic Council. It was very different from her previous messages. I must completely revise our understanding of human behavior, she wrote. What we interpreted as aggression is actually cooperation. What we saw as dangerous training is actually careful preparation. What we thought was violence is actually play that builds strength and friendship. She paused, thinking about Zixtal playing tag and laughing when he fell down. The humans aren't teaching their children to be warriors. They're teaching them to be survivors who take care of each other. Every game has a purpose. Every challenge makes them stronger. Every activity brings them closer together. She looked out the window at the playground where some human and alien children were still playing together in the fading light. Most importantly, they've taught our children something we had forgotten, that strength comes not from avoiding difficulties, but from facing them together. The humans don't play these games because they're violent. They play them because they're human. And perhaps, in learning to play with them, our children are learning to be a little more human too. As the week ended, the alien students prepared to return to their homeworlds. But they would take with them more than just academic knowledge. They would carry the memory of children who turned strangers into friends, who shared their strength with others, and who found joy in facing challenges together. And on their distant worlds, when they told stories of the human children they had met, they would speak not of dangerous warriors, but of the bravest and kindest young creatures in the galaxy. The children of Earth who played games that made everyone stronger.